Okay, we will now convene the City Council study session for June the 16th. And again, I'll note that all of our council are present. Item 1 on this agenda is to review our agenda for our Monday, June 20th meeting. I know we've got some items of interest on that. Ms. Spilsbury, why don't you kick us off?
I was just curious on 5M, what exactly that is it's the central reuse pipeline, so I'm just wondering if we're just getting started or what that exactly is for.
Right, that's the project we've been talking about.
Right, I know. I just what this specifically,
Oh.
like
So-
where are we on the process, I guess?
So I want to take that from engineering. I think this is just the beginning stages of identifying the CMAR, the construction manager at risk, who works with us at the beginning as we go through the design of the project. So they're available to help us as we go through that phase. I don't know if there's a whole lot more to say.
Okay.
Correct, Mayor, Councilmember Spilsbury. So this is, let's see, this was the,
So
This
5M.
This is the pre-construction services contract for the contractors. So we are just getting them on board right now to help us with cost estimating. I think we are on the order of about 30% design on the project, but we're in the process of locating all the utilities and potholing and all the information we need to be able to run a big pipe in the right of way. But this contract is only to get the contractor on board so we can get real numbers for the project. As you all know, inflation's hit our projects pretty hard. So we'd like to get some better estimates on what it's going to cost us and if there are things we can do to mitigate that cost.
Well, and then getting the contractor on board before we complete design, they also help
Yes, sir.
give some ideas for the design about maybe other methods or approaches that can save us money.
Okay, so then this process will help us then create a timeline for when the next phases will be happening.
Yeah, they help us a lot with materials, construction methods, means and methods, techniques, and help us try to find the most economical but quality way to build a project.
Okay, great. I'm just, really interested in where we're going with this.
right, the design, so the design's moving along.
Perfect.
About a week and a half ago, there was a workshop for the contractor, not the contractor yet, but the design team and the consultant to get together and go over the 30% design plans and just go over those comments. So they're working towards 60. So they're on schedule here within the next couple of months to have 60% design done. So the design's moving along pretty well.
And our goal is to have this pipeline in service, I believe, in the May of 2025.
Yeah, the first part of 2025.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Other items on the agenda? Ms. Spilsbury, why don't you just keep going?
Well, my other one is 9A. I just wanted to ask for a continuance on that one more time. I think we're gonna just try, the neighbors are not quite there yet. There's just a few more things in the good neighbor policy that they're trying to work out with the developer's attorney, and they would like to have one more neighborhood meeting next week, and so they're asking for a continuance on that.
Okay. Donna, Mr. Brady, should we continue it to a date certain?
Well, so you have two dates that we can choose before the break, right? So you have July 5th and July 11th. So those are the two before the break.
Yeah.
Obviously,
I
so.
would like to get it done before we break, I think.
So I'm just suggesting either one of those. I don't know,
Right.
whatever the preference is.
There's not a big difference between July 5th
No,
and
because
July
we're
11th.
going to do them one after the other. They come quickly, so.
Okay, I'll suggest the 5th then. Just
Okay.
do one
Okay.
more continuance for 2 weeks, and then hopefully we can get everything worked out, and then go for a vote on July 5th.
All right, thank you for working on that,
Okay.
Ms. Spilsbury. And so the neighborhood, they'll get the word that July the 5th is when this is going to come to a head. Okay, thank you very much. I need to speak on one of our items, item 5L. I need to let people know I have a conflict of interest. I have a family member that works for one of the businesses involved in that item, so that needs to come off the consent agenda, and I will not be participating in that, Vice Mayor, for item 5L. Any other questions or comments on Monday's agenda?
Mayor and Council, I just want to go back to the 9A and the July 5th. I just want to make sure you're comfortable. We'll agendize it for continuance to July 5th, which means that then we can tell the neighbors that they don't need to come, Monday, next week. But that also means council has to continue it, right? You're not going to, you couldn't vote to approve it. I just want to make sure you're comfortable with that. That's the intent, is to put it on the actual agenda for continuance.
So you're not planning on taking any action on Monday?
Yeah, right.
Okay, I just want to make sure that that's the intent.
So the item on the agenda will be to continue it.
Not to take
July
action,
5th.
yeah.
Not to take action, it'll be for continuance only. Okay.
Got it. All right, council, anything else on Monday's agenda that you'd like to go over? Hearing none, we do have several items on the agenda for today. Item 2A is a presentation and to provide direction on the use, sale, and possession of fireworks and permissible consumer fireworks enforcement efforts and upcoming changes to state law. It's a timely item, middle of June. Gentlemen, welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Nope.
Stand by.
Hold on.
There we go. Mayor and Council, good morning. I'm Steve Ward, Deputy Chief with the Mesa Fire and Medical Department and the Fire Marshal, and I have Commander Beaton here with us.
Good morning, Commander Mike Beaton.
And Jeff Bayon, the Police Legal Advisor with the City Attorney's Office.
So this morning, I'm going to go ahead and get us kicked off before I pass it over to Commander Beaton. And what we're going to do is just do a brief overview of what legal and illegal fireworks look like. And as with everything fireworks, those definitions are given to us in Arizona revised statutes. And as you can see, legal fireworks falls into two different categories. The first category is what we call novelty items. And those novelty items are items that you can find in party stores and other types of stores, and there is no limit on which days you can buy those or when you can use those. So those are set out, and they're pretty much like the party poppers and small smoke devices, that kind of thing. Now, as you'll notice on the second definition of legal fireworks, there are some other items. Now, the caveat to these legal fireworks is that they're used on the designated days that you can buy, sell, or use these fireworks. And these are the fireworks that we would expect to see for sale in our tents and kiosks that we have in the city. And as of Tuesday, we had an application for 21 of those. So this is what we would expect to see for sale in those kiosks. And these are things like the cylinders that emit the low intensity spark showers. These are the smoke devices, the low intensity type stuff like that, and the definition. And we have actually, there we go. This is a little bit of a busy slide, but it does have some good visuals on there of these types of devices. And the main thing with these devices is that they are not aerial devices. So that is kind of what denotes a legal versus a legal firework. Now, as we move into the illegal fireworks, this is something that we would not expect to see for sale in our kiosks and tents. A good way to define or know what an illegal firework is anything that is designed to become aerial, that has a report, like a bang or an explosion, anything that has that kind of a report with a flash, a smoke, things that are associated with large fireworks shows that we do have in the city, and there are provisions for those. Those are what we would consider illegal fireworks. So all the iterations of those things like Roman candles, mortars, which are reloadable, skyrockets, bottle rockets, all of those items, the prepackaged things that go off in succession, all of those items are illegal fireworks. And of course, we have provisions to see those kinds of shows. We have 3 great shows scheduled here in Mesa. The city does a fantastic one. Those are the kinds of shows, those are the kinds of fireworks that we associate with 4th of July. But for the consumer to buy, sell, or use those fireworks, even on the designated days, those are illegal fireworks. So, Commander?
Good morning. So we took a look at our calls for service. We get about 1,300 calls for service a year. for fireworks, but they are concentrated around a couple, 2, maybe 3 dates. 4th of July, New Year's Eve being the big ones, Memorial Day, some of those as well are involved in that. But it's a significant amount of calls per year for 2 dates, Memorial Day and, for 4th of July is one of the biggest ones. So and obviously that's upcoming, so we want to have a plan for enforcement. And the first big part of that is we partnered with fire. So all of our crime prevention officers of the districts will be going out with fire with these inspections, so we know what to look for on these 21 vendors that are in the city of Mesa. We're also going to conduct surprise inspections to make sure they're complying with state and city codes. So that, along with a media release, we come up with a flyer for educational purposes to put out about what's legal, what's illegal, and when and where they can use permissible fireworks. And then we also have uniformed enforcement as well as plainclothes enforcement plan. So the gist of the plan will be involving education and enforcement. The officers will be expected to take some sort of action on a fireworks call, either educate the people and then document that in the call comments so that follow-on officers know that they've already been educated and it may be time to take some enforcement. So that is what the plan will be. And as Chief Ward stated, prior to any of these vendors opening up, they must comply, they must get inspected and comply with the state laws and city codes before they even get their permit to open up. So, and then as we move forward from that, there's also State Bill 1275 that has been signed, but won't be in effect for this 4th of July. So we're not going to get into a whole lot of detail on it. When it goes into effect, we will come back and present what those changes will be.
Vice Mayor.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As council members, we get constant calls about illegal fireworks, and it's very difficult to enforce or control. From what I understand, that I've been told that unless PD can actually witness the person using the illegal firework, there's not much they can do. So if a neighbor notices this is going on, they call, someone comes out, it, I guess, is just maybe just informative. I mean, I don't know. A lot of people of our constituents have frustration on how to control it in their neighborhoods when they know illegal fireworks are going off. So what's your advice?
So advice is always call if you see something. The hard part is like you stated, we have to enforce the law. We have to have the evidence that this person actually violated the law or the city code. So and it's difficult, especially with the aerial fireworks, because you can see them from all over. And you may be calling from an aerial firework that occurred blocks away. So we now have to go and attempt to find where this was fired off. And if we pull up and we see someone shooting a firework, we can take action on that. So, but if they call in, give us an area, we will do an area check. If we see a group of people that could have possibly been shooting this off, educate. We have that flyer we're gonna hand out and explain to them, hey, this is illegal, this is dangerous. You can't be doing this, you're subject to city code and state law. And then get their names, document that in those call comments. And then if officers respond back again, and they're continuing to do that, we have a little bit more information where we can go to check. And then if we find them and are able to charge them, that would be a possibility as well.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I know it's very difficult and for everybody involved to control the situation. And hopefully after the Senate bill is in effect, it'll be less disruptive to our neighborhoods with it not going on overnight. So we'll just cross our fingers and ask everybody to be responsible. Don't use illegal fireworks. It is dangerous as well as very disruptive to people's lives, their pets, PTSD for veterans. The list goes on. And so I just ask everybody to enjoy the holiday. We have a great celebration of freedom with the fireworks to enjoy, and be responsible in this holiday. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Luna, then Ms. Pillsbury.
Well, first of all, thank you for doing this. Can we give you like specific areas where we know this is gonna happen? Because I know exactly where it's gonna happen on 4th of July, and then I'll get flooded with emails. You know, it's just a problem, and I feel bad for the pets. The poor dogs have to endure this, and they freak out, you know. I have 2 of them, so is that a possibility? The problem is you call the police, you gotta be very specific, you know, and you're short-staffed, you're spread thin. By the time they get there, that's already done. But can we give you a specific area ahead of time and say, it's probably gonna happen?
Councilmember Luna, absolutely. That's what the crime prevention officers will have some areas. We'll collect those and we'll disseminate those for that briefing on the 4th of July and say, hey, for the beat officers, let's go hang out in these areas and take a look. Okay. That is a great idea, and we'll make sure the crime prevention officers can contact you or any of the other council members and get those areas where you believe they may be happening or where you get the most calls from.
Okay, well, look forward to an email. I will be very specific
All right,
and
yes,
tell you
sir.
exactly the time it's gonna happen and where it might end and the area where it's gonna happen. Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate the work gone into this because I know we've been pushing to see what else we can do and what options we have. I like that there's going to be some better enforcement on some of the sales of this. We all know that a lot of people are crossing state borders to go get thousands of dollars worth of fireworks, though. I guess my thing is that I think everyone I've ever talked to knows there's no enforcement on this, and so that's why they do it. And so do we has there been discussions that you're going to actually, I don't know how to say it, maybe try a little bit harder on 4th of July night to go out to enforce, to, you know what I mean, instead of just like, well, everyone's gonna do it, so we'll just let them do it. It's fun, I get it, everyone loves to do this, but I care more about the babies, the autistic kids, the older people that, you know, anyways, the dogs are important too, but it's very, very disruptive to a lot of people's lives. And it happens for hours and hours and hours and hours.
Councilmember Spilsbury, absolutely, that is going out to the officers. The expectation is if you're on a call, take some sort of action, whether it's education, gathering names, and like I said, we have the CAD comments and adding those names and adding what you did so that any follow-on officers knows, hey, we've already educated them, it may be time to take enforcement. So, but that is the expectation, some action on the call. And we don't want to tell them, hey, enforce every time. I don't think that's what we're known for, but if they've already been educated, it may be time to take some enforcement. So that is what's going out.
Okay, because I totally understand you have so many things to take care of that night, and this is just one of the issues. But if people realize that police cars are out, driving around, they could be coming around the corner any minute, you know, just changing the feel in the community that something might happen, and so maybe that would prevent some of this. Because we all know it's happening every single street, I feel like. Everything's illegal. Do people do legal fireworks anymore? I don't. Anyway, it feels like everything's up in the air. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Reddy.
On the breakdown, the legal, the aerials is that a statewide ban, or do local municipalities allow some aerials, or is it a mix?
Only aerials are allowed at displays, at ones that are permitted, like the larger displays, not for consumers, not for the public.
Okay.
But to your answer, Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, this is a statewide.
It's a statewide.
Yeah, the local control has been preempted by state law. So
Okay.
am I saying that correct?
Yeah, all fireworks are illegal statewide. Cities can also
Set up.
can ban that too.
Okay. Because I swear I've seen aerials in some of these sellers, and so when you do see these illegal fireworks, what's the repercussions on like a stand that has some of these? Is it immediate shutdown, or what's the process of when you send those investigators or plainclothes officers and they do see illegal fireworks being sold? What happens next?
Currently, it is a civil seizure where we take all of that, then you'd be in violation and subject to a civil fine within the city until, if it occurs more than once, if you're a habitual offender, you're subject to a misdemeanor crime. So.
Okay.
And Councilmember Heredia, so On the 21 sales points, after they're permitted, after they have an inspection and they're permitted, but they have to pass our inspection to get permitted, those sites get visited multiple times by fire inspectors and the police department. If we do discover illegal fireworks, those, as Commander Beaton said, those fireworks are confiscated and that stand is shut down.
Okay.
There's a state statute that says that, it's ARS 36-1607, that a peace officer shall seize, remove, or cause to be removed at the expense of the owner all fireworks or combustibles offered or exposed for sale, stored, or possessed in the violation of the state statute.
And have we done seizures of these stands that operate in Mesa before, that you all know of?
That has occurred, yes.
That has occurred, okay.
Yeah, let me just be clear, Mayor Council. I think what we're presenting to you is not the status quo. What we're presenting to you is a new level of enforcement this year. So what you're hearing is, in the past, certainly we've had the calls, but recognize that, you know, there were a lot of things going on that night, but we are giving specific focus and attention to an approach to increase the enforcement, even to the, and I want to manage expectations, obviously. We have so many resources we can dedicate to it, but the thought is we are going to be more proactive in the approach than we may have been in the past, both with this, you know, the kiosks, the stands, but also giving the officers the tools and kind of the guidance and direction that, you know, if we get 1,300 calls or whatever the calls we get on 4th of July, we will be responding. In the past, it probably has gotten kind of pushed to the back. Having the feedback from council, we're going to be much more on the enforcement side or education side first. But at the same time, as you all know, it's going to be very difficult, but our hope is that through the actions of the police department, if we are successful in being able to enforce this, we'll use that as an opportunity to continue to show people, the citizens, that we are going to be out there, and it's just the idea that the possibility that there's could be a police officer around the corner, and we're not just going to drive by. We're going to get out of the car and have a conversation. So.
Thank you. Mr. Freeman.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, thanks to our government staff and working with the Arizona League and passing the lobbying for this ordinance change in the Senate bill. I'm sure Commander Beaton will be happy to take me off his emergency call list, because during the fireworks season, he and I talked quite a bit. But I was thinking, you know, based on some of the comments from some of my colleagues, is we create a heat map of, you know, the most calls in the area, so that officers on patrol can kind of say, okay, this is, you know, when you do your briefing, your patrol briefings, you can say, okay, be aware of this area. And, you know, the patrol officers know their beats. In fact, I talked to a supervisor this morning, and she said that this is really necessary for our officers to enforce, because right now, you know, when we show up, we just do just some talk to the people and then move on. But just in District 1, I've had 2 structure fires just to the misuse of fireworks. So I appreciate this. So I look forward to this ordinance and our officers being responsive. I have a lot of constituents that call me personally and send emails, as the rest of us. So this is very much needed. And then the enforcement aspect. As far as the vendors, Chief Ward, when we go out to the vendors, do we have any vendors that are not operating 100%? Do we find some misuse out there? Because I know last year we did a seizure. I think police and fire did a seizure of quite a few fireworks in a rental place, warehouse.
Again, for the most part, our vendors are doing a pretty good job of doing that. It is not a normal thing to go out and find large stocks of illegal fireworks at our vendors. So, but we do visit them for, it is a safety issue, so we visit them often, and that is one thing we check for.
Okay.
And so.
So they're pretty much in compliant,
yes.
All our vendors?
Yeah.
All right. And then education for, you know, the public that go across state lines or bring aerial fireworks back. Gosh, I mean, I think all of us in this room are affected by the misuse of fireworks, but it's going to be a battle. And so thank you for both of you and your departments, what you're going to do.
Thank
Thank you for, look forward to hearing from you when the new law takes effect, but just a reminder on the law that is in effect right now, this is a great description of what is illegal. Can you talk a little bit about when, right? Because obviously there's certain days that you can do this, certain days that you can't. Is there hours, you know, if at 1 o'clock in the morning on July the 6th, is it illegal? Or, I mean, what's the window for when fireworks can be used?
According to our city code, the use of consumer permissible fireworks is limited to June 24th through July 6th and December 24th through January 3rd. Sale of consumer permissible fireworks is limited to May 20th through July 6th and December 10th through January 3rd.
Okay, what about hours? For example, if some people might be using legal fireworks and there's a loud noise associated with that and they're doing it in the wee hours of the morning, can their neighbors call the police in that situation or not?
So the hours is what's coming in the Senate bill that just passed. So it did pass, it was signed by the governor. But for people that don't know, the effective date is not until 90 days after the final adjournment of the legislature, which has not occurred yet, or it's referred to as sine die. And so it won't be until 90 days after that final adjournment. And we'll bring to council after the break an ordinance to embed those hours of use concept also. And so that'll be in place for New Year's, but not for 4th of July. And so that's
this point right now, there aren't any.
correct.
Okay.
That's probably our biggest challenge, is not, it's both illegal fireworks, but it's the time of morning or night that they continue to go off.
However, legal ones aren't loud. I mean, those aren't the ones that people are calling and complaining about typically, right? Like, the legal ones are loud, but not where it's gonna affect
They're not
pets
as
and
loud,
sleep
but I
and-
think
yeah.
there's probably some of the things on that list that make a noise that would be disruptive to a neighbor.
Maybe.
So I guess we do have to educate folks that, sorry, this year, the police can come out, but if it's on this list of approved fireworks, even if it makes a loud noise, if they're doing it at all hours of the morning, that's not illegal. Am I saying that correctly?
You're correct, but I think Councilman Spilzer is correct too. It's a combination, right? The illegal fireworks are still gonna be illegal,
Yeah.
regardless of when you shoot them off, but that's probably the bigger complaints. But then you have the legal fireworks, which we can then eventually limit the time. So I want to be careful in saying, yes, there's going to be an improvement in enforcement and what we can do with the state law, but it's not going to still fall. If people are shooting off illegal fireworks now, those illegal fireworks are still illegal after the change. So it's still a lot of work we have to, a lot of work ahead of us.
Where does a firecracker fit on the spectrum here?
So firecrackers are illegal.
Yeah. So I guess that'd be an example of something that's loud and legal.
Firecrackers are
Illegal.
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 Correct.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry to enunciate that. Firecrackers are illegal always.
That second little box.
I got
Yeah,
it.
right there on the bottom there.
Great, so even though they're not projectiles, it's just the bang is what
Correct.
disqualifies them. Okay, good to know.
So Mayor, I just looked up on our briefing on this new State Bill 1275 that'll go into effect in September. And it eliminates that you cannot use fireworks of any kind, well, especially illegal, but any between 11 p.m. and 8 a.m. with the exception of New Year's Eve and 4th of July. So hopefully with that regulation, there'll at least maybe be a slowdown, that overnight we're not waking up to the sound of fireworks going off. Not that it'll stop them, I know it's a chore, but we're making a little bit of progress and at least having it illegal to have them go off between 11 p.m. and 8 a.m.
Well, and Mayor, and that was
during the loud days.
that was the piece of legislation I was referring to. And so that won't be in effect for this 4th of July, but we will come back after the break and adopt an ordinance consistent with that state statute. And so that'll be for New Year's.
Okay.
And the actual date of when the state law goes into effect isn't determined yet because sine die hasn't occurred yet.
Got it. Okay, well, I know this will be continued then.
Yes.
Council, any other questions on this topic?
Oh, Maybe I'll just ask, we talked at one point about possibly increasing fines,
Yeah.
so is that
When we
still-
bring back
okay.
the other, we'll bring back.
Perfect, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll look forward to your next report.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda, item 2B, is a presentation and to discuss an update on the city's current allocations and proposed disbursement of the American Rescue Plan Act funds.
Good morning, Mayor, council members. My name is Mike Kennington, Chief Financial Officer. With me is Irma Ashworth, our Finance Director. Today, we'll be giving you a high-level update on the American Rescue Plan Act for City of Mesa, the local fiscal recovery plan. After our presentation, you'll hear two other presentations more in depth on two programs that are included in our plan. But today, we wanted to give you an update on where we're at today.
Thanks. Good morning. Just an update on the funds. We have received now the total of $105 million from the feds. We received the second tranche, or the second half of it, last week. So we have received all the funds. A reminder of when we get to spend the money. Everything has to be obligated by December 31st of 2024, and everything has to be spent by December 31st of 2026. And a reminder of the high level categories that the Treasury has provided as guidance on what are eligible uses. Responding to public health emergencies or negative economic impacts is one of the main ones. Providing premium pay for essential workers, replacing lost revenues, and then the last one, investing in necessary water, wastewater, and or broadband infrastructure. So as we went through our plans, we made sure it fit into one of these categories. This is the current ARPA project plan. This is how we have budgeted the funds so far. If you start at the top, the public safety support's about 9% of the budget, 42% household and small business assistance. Then the next big chunk is housing support programs, like our Off the Streets program as an example. We have some SCADA and cybersecurity projects that you'll be hearing about later today. Premium pay for essential workers, and then we still have some unallocated funds. Okay. The next two slides are detail of the projects that we have. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I just kind of wanted to let you know what's in the slides. The first column after the name of the project is what has been budgeted. If that you add that up, it adds up to the $105 million. The next one is what has been currently encumbered, and then the third one is what we currently has spent. The last column that has a project program update, if it's checked, that means we have had this project either come through and be approved by council through a presentation and or an agenda item, and it's just in various process. It could be in contract phase, it could be in procurement phase, we could be spending it, it could be in any of those areas. If there is no check mark next to it, for example, the downtown district revitalization, it means we haven't presented anything to you. We will today, or not me, but Jeff and Jeff. You know, the ones that we have spent the most money on so far are the ambulances, the 5 of those ambulances that were purchased with ARPA funds. The energy commodity costs, the assistance that we've been providing to our customers in our electric. Is it gas or is it electric?
Electric.
Thank you, I was right. And Wi-Fi. I'm sorry, I can't see that good today. And the last one is the technology program. Some of the other projects on this one, we have some housing support programs that we have allocated dollars to, but not a lot has been spent. The one that's been going the most right now is the Off the Streets program, and the SCADA and cybersecurity, which you'll have a presentation on later. And then we did have the premium pay for essential workers that we did in January. So that's kind of a high level of where we are on the projects, and we can answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Ms. Pillsbury.
On the column of actual expenses, is that, are those final numbers, or those are like as of today?
Those
but
are
we're gonna
as of
still-
May 31st. Sorry, I should
So
have
how
said
would we
that.
know which ones you're going to keep adding to, or which ones are done? Like, I think, okay,
Oh.
you know what I mean? Like if the,
It's been completed.
yes.
Yeah, there's very few of those. Maybe ambulance.
The ambulance is probably the closest. That one was budgeted for 1.8 million, and currently there's been 1.6.
Yeah,
That's been spent
I would
on
say
that.
Like even the real-time crime center, I know it's done, so does that mean that number's done, or is there still more stuff we're
There's probably
adding?
some,
The majority of the ARPA funds are paying for the technology, and so
Okay.
some of those are multi-year. So there will be funding that will continue on that through '24.
So I can pretty much assume that most of those are just current.
yeah, they're just a
Yes.
snapshot at the
Okay.
time, and they're probably, a lot of those, the dollars are still coming in, or as we're saying that, Irma's saying that we may have just, some of it takes a lot of design, we have to do appraisals, we have to do a lot of work for, even though the council's approved it, we now have to go through the federal process of the procurement. So the ones that, well, you'll have some today that we're bringing to you after this presentation. The second area, you saw there's a lot related to housing, and Natalie's been working very diligently with our nonprofit partners, and we'll be bringing several of those after the break. But they are moving along, and there's some really good opportunities that we'll be bringing to you. It's just, again, it's working with the nonprofits, establishing the project, going through the process, and making sure we have the right procurement steps in place to make sure when we spend the dollars, it's eligible under the federal guidelines.
So if everything has to be kind of figured out by 2024, but not spent until 2026, like at what point do you know where you can shift money or where you have extra somewhere? Or?
Yeah, well, we could do that. As far as it falls out from
Yeah.
what we have here, we'll probably, we probably need, it just depends on kind of if it's a construction project that needs design and a contractor, that's probably a year or so out. Okay. If it's a service where we're providing the energy commodities, really, the electric is helping our low-income qualified residents meet their, be able to pay their bills, right, with the spike in electric cost. That's intended, though, as a 2-year program. So you'll see it constantly being drawn down over periods of time. I don't know.
So you'll just keep.
We'll keep bringing this back. It's just because they're all very different in their nature of how they're. Some of them are programs where dollars are going out maybe monthly. Some of them are purchasing something, so it'll come in a big chunk. Some of them may be projects, and it'll take a whole year for all of that to take place.
Okay.
But we'll bring this report back to you regularly just to keep you updated. Obviously, after we get through the end of 2023, we'll have to take a really hard look because, again, if there's going to be dollars that are going to fall out, we need to have the time, again, to reprogram and go through the process so we can have them spent and obligated before the deadlines.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Freeman.
Thank you. I was going to slide 3 and maybe on your bullet points. I know we've benchmarked some numbers for each one of the things that you've listed there, but on slide 3, can you describe the negative economic impacts, what qualifies for that, and also what means replacing lost revenue?
Sure. So the negative economic impacts refers to those who were negatively impacted by COVID. Specifically, the final rule speaks to low-income families that lost their jobs or those that were close to being homeless or that are homeless, small businesses that were shut down. So anyone that's in a qualified census tract, the Treasury has assumed was hurt by COVID and therefore were negatively economically impacted. So when we use that term, it means, or I should say how the Treasury uses that term, because they're the ones that defined it, those homes, those households, and those small businesses that were hurt by COVID, by the shutdown, lost jobs, lost revenues.
But the easiest way for us to qualify that definition has been to use the
Qualified census tract.
Qualified census tracts. And we don't have to really get into much more. We don't have to question really the status, the income of the individuals, anybody inside or any project inside those qualified census tracts, which is fairly well mirrors our CDBG qualified census tracts. We can spend the money in there and we really don't have to. It makes a presumption that it meets that definition just by spending it in those areas.
So that makes it simpler for any auditing that might come forward.
Yes.
Correct. Either from the external auditors that will do their normal single audit of the federal funds. And, the Treasury does have the right to come in and audit at any time as well. So that's what it would be to have the support for that.
So did you talk about replacing lost revenue in that
No.
same sentence
I did not.
or paragraph?
Okay, so the replacement lost revenues, a lot of municipalities actually lost revenues during COVID because their sales tax dollars went down. Some that collect state income taxes, for example, states or local income tax, that was deferred, if you remember it, so they didn't get that revenue by June 30th. So some of the governments actually lost revenue, and in recognition of that, the Treasury said, if you lost revenue, you can spend some of the Arpa dollars in just regular general city operations. It doesn't have to be for public health, it doesn't have to be for the negative economic impacts, it doesn't have to be for these infrastructure projects. So a lot of governments could do that. We did not lose revenue in the calculations, but the Treasury did also give an option in the final rule that they just presumed that everyone did. And so for some of the smaller municipalities, they don't have to prove that they lost revenue. They can use up to $10 million of the ARPA funds for general city services.
So then we can quantify whether we didn't lose sales tax revenue or any revenue?
Fortunately,
Candace is back
if
there
you look
shaking
at
her
our
head.
sales tax collections, we did not. Remember, we did pretty well, although we think there's that presumption of the 10 million. We're going to look and see if we could still qualify for that, because that assumption that if you had some lost revenue, even if, I don't know, if we can get the 10 million, then it gives us a lot more flexibility in how to spend it. And that's why you notice at the end, we've left about 10 million on that we haven't spent. So we're studying that over to see, because that would be nice to have $10 million to be very flexible. You know,
So
still
those
doing,
monies would go in the general fund?
well, yeah, but I don't want to say,
Or-
I think we would do something that would be
Okay.
important, that would support the general government. That's kind of how I would say.
I mean,
right?
we've been pretty vocal about the fact that our sales tax revenue has been increasing.
Yeah, that would be-
Things have been pretty positive
Yeah,
for our community
so,
and
yeah.
city.
Yeah.
And our
And it's not
budget.
just one bucket of revenue either. So the Treasury gives you two ways to calculate your revenue loss. And you could either prove that you lost revenue and it's all revenue sources. You can't say, I lost revenue in sales tax, but I had a great property tax, right? It has to be total government revenues. Or they have given us the presumption and saying, we think all governments lost money, so you can use up to $10 million of the ARPA funds for that. There are some Q&As that they have released, that's what Chris is referring to, that Mike and I are looking at to see if that allows us to use up to the $10 million in ARPA for general fund.
And Mayor and Councilmember Freeman, the current, to Irma's point, the current language says we don't need to provide anything to take that allocation. And that allocation, that standard allocation is available for all cities and towns. And so we'll continue to look at that and see if that's a possibility.
And I'll talk a little bit more about this later. One of the things we're really trying to find a way maybe to assist us with, because all cities are challenged by this. You heard the city of Phoenix made some significant changes in compensation, but we are looking at ways to provide not just for any one group of employees, but a significant incentives for retention, because we want to retain our employees first, and then we also need to attract new employees. So there's a program I'm going to talk about later today where we are bringing back a previous benefit that we want to reestablish for our employees that we think will be a significant retention. And this part of this 10 million we think could go towards helping us with that, if it's eligible. But we want to make sure it's eligible first before we come back to council.
Okay.
So.
Just to final up one of my questions back when I've been thinking, the negative economic impacts and the small businesses or residential, people who've lost monies or whatever, how are we going to get those monies to them? I mean, do we have our nonprofits that we're using leverage though?
That energy, what did we call it?
The energy costs, commodity costs?
That's really literally going to customers. That's offsetting their electric bills for those in the.
So we're going to use that in our utility programs?
Yep, it's
Yes,
being used right
exactly.
now.
They're
We've
seeing
already
a reduction.
Like a reserve fund, like we.
Well, no, we're actually right now directly
It's a credit on the
crediting their
utility bill.
accounts today.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why we've already spent $10 million.
Gotcha.
And then I guess the other ones would be more of in the homeless projects, because the city has been really successful with the ERAP funds. We've already had a lot of funds that go into the help with the rent assistance. So we
Yeah.
did not allocate
Separate and apart
any from
the-
this.
Right, separate
to-
apart from ARPA, we have all those other funds from another source that we've been allocating for rental assistance. So that's a different program.
A different
but-
bucket.
Yeah, it's a different bucket than.
So for the
Okay.
small businesses, the programs that are on here that would benefit them would be the Downtown District Revitalization, the Restaurant Food Business Incubator Program, and the Small Business Technical Assistance Program, and the Learning Lab. So those last four are programs that are meant to assist the small businesses.
Okay, thank you. I know this was a high-level presentation, but I think I got in the weeds in this, so
I'm glad I have the answers for you.
thank you.
So to keep it at a high level, but for example, we talk a lot about all the money we've dispersed for eviction prevention, utility assistance, and that's in the tens of millions of dollars. I think every time I ask, it's gone up 10 million, so
Or
we're probably 40,
40,
40, 50 million, 45 right now. That's not ARPA money.
That's not ARPA.
Okay. Remind me what that is.
That's
What-
ERAP,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Emergency Rental Assistance Program.
Okay. And how much, have we received money beyond that 45 million from ERAP, or do we have, what's the future of ERAP?
Natalie, maybe you could help, because this ERAP is some.
How much longer can we be in the rental assistance business?
Good morning, Mayor, Council. We're actually getting to the bottom of the barrel for the rent assistance program. We think we'll be out of money by the end of September. However, there's a lot of conversation going on at the state level, but also at the federal level with the Treasury, because at the Treasury level nationally, there's still some leftover dollars for the Emergency Rental Assistance Program 1. And so there could be a redisbursement of that. And then also at a state level, the same thing. So there's conversations going on, and there's still funding that we're at the table and we're discussing that with them so that we can continue the program in a longer term without having to dig into the ARPA dollars.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, please keep us up to date, because I was speaking at a church group, a couple of days ago, and I said, hey, for now, we're still in the emergency rental assistance business, but so make sure you're referring all your church members and others, in need to the city, but at some point, that's gonna dry up.
Yeah, even with the ARPA dollars, I mean, if we'll watch and see with ERAP, and if we get to a point where we need to make it through the end of the year, I'm sure we could come back and talk about ARPA funds kind of covering that gap. But at some point, all these funds will, I think we try again, remember we had this conversation about ARPA, we try to use it for investments that created long-term investments that would be with us beyond just regular assistance. Not to say there isn't some direct assistance in here, but we're also trying to focus on larger investments that will be with the city for a long time.
All right, thank you very much. Council, any other discussion or questions on this item? Vice Mayor?
I'll just make one comment on it. Early on, we started with the CARES dollars, and those CARES dollars, because we're a city over 500,000 in population, we're able to receive that direct funding in order to assist our residents with food distribution, so many other services. And we were able to repurpose many of our employees to assist with those programs. And so I think having those CARE dollars that we administrated immediately helped us as a city be more resilient at the time. Coming out of that, and during it, for whatever we needed, we're ordering from Amazon or whatever, not leaving the house. We're not going to Scottsdale or another city to do our spending. Our spending is from home. Our sales tax dollars went up, and so that really helped us. So now we're in the position of using the ERAP, which is, the rental assistance. But the ARPA dollars, I think it's like Mr. Brady mentioned, it's very critical that we use this for the long-term resilience and sustainability of our business and our homeless support, whatever we can do, because we know there's going to be tough times ahead. Maybe there's another virus. We don't know. We are expecting a recession. There's a lot of things, because economies are economies and the world is what it is, especially today's world is very volatile, very up and down. So these investments, these dollars going into programs and services and opportunities helps us weather that better as a city and become more resilient for our future. And I think that's the critical part, that we need to focus the dollars more than you know, some of these other considerations. I just want to make sure it's in the long-term resilience of our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Redio.
I think it was talked about as far as the unallocated funds, but Mr. Brady, is there a process of if we're not able to use the 10 million that you mentioned to supplant into our budget, if I misunderstood that, what is the process to look at potential projects?
We would come back to, like we're doing today. We can always continue to come back to council and say, here's another idea, thought, and proposal.
To fill that gap.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. We just wanted to identify, so you see the total amount. We're still considering, but we also felt like we didn't want to budget everything in the first year because things change, and so we but we didn't want to leave a lot on the table. I think we got a little more than 10% sitting there that's unallocated. We're early on in the process, so we kind of want to get through this first year, and then I think as we move into next year, we'll come back and have more conversations with council. And as was mentioned, some of these projects, the budget number we have set up, it may fall out, it may be a little less, it'll be a little more. We want to just keep coming back to council regularly and having this conversation, so.
Perfect, thank you.
Mr. Luna.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to make sure that we spend the money as quickly as possible because we don't want Congress to say, oh, there's some money still available in Mesa, Arizona. And not just Mesa, but throughout the country, and then they're going to want it back. So can we spend it as quickly as
Okay,
possible?
sure. We'll do that.
Really,
I think the good news is it's in our account now. So I think that was, we appreciate that. Now that we have received the cash, I think it'd be very difficult unless Mr. Butler finds a way to take it back from us, but we will try to encumber that.
Yeah, let me be the wet blanket. And Mayor, Councilmember Luna, I know Mr. Brady's very tuned into this, and Irma and Mike have been following this closely, but you're right. And you've probably heard this through NLC and through Conference of Mayors have been very active in telling cities, encumber your dollars, because we've seen everything from COVID funds that are being debated in Congress to Ukraine funding, everything from child nutrition programs and other things that they're trying to find what Congress refers to as pay-fors so that it doesn't add to the federal deficit. So what does that mean? They're looking for unallocated, unencumbered dollars that went out to cities and states to try to rescind those dollars. And so you're exactly right. I know our team's sensitive to that, but that is a real threat. And I know you'll continue to hear that more through the national organizations because Congress is desperate to find cost-neutral ways to pay for new programs, and there's especially been a lot of frustration, not necessarily at cities, but at states for not spending their dollars. There's a huge balance that many states have of their ARPA and even CARES dollars that have been unallocated. So that is something that I know we're going to have to monitor closely in the months to come.
Okay. Yes.
I'm not going to take you into the weeds on this. However, I'm just looking at some of the projects supported here. On the public safety side of it, it doesn't seem there's a lot of dollars allocated towards public safety in general, police, fire, and some of the other departments. Is there?
Oh, I would suggest there's probably a significant amount.
Well, I'm just out of 105 million.
So you look
just the first four.
The first four, and then go down.
Are there others in there
the second
that I'm
one.
not?
Where is it?
And Councilmember Freeman, the premium pay is going to be mostly
That's all
public safety as well.
Yeah, that's the big chunk.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, but that's at the bottom, is the.
I'm sorry. We will move that up with the other four so that
Okay.
you can see it there.
But are there any other projects that our public safety departments need to be, build their foundation and create some more reliability for them and some infrastructure that's needed that can be supported?
We'll keep
in
looking.
this?
There's a section in ARPA that talks about it, but it's a fairly.
The public safety one is very specific
Specific,
to like PP&E or infrastructure speaks to hospitals and other things like that, like a clinic, not a police station or a fire station.
No, I get that.
So
I'm not expecting that.
Yeah, so the programs that we have, can you go back to page one?
But you talked about ambulances. Is there
Correct. We
something,
have the
other
ambulance.
physical purchases, transportation-wise?
We could. It's just that, again, if it creates a a commitment of additional personnel, that's not available. So you could, I mean, if you even went and bought all this new equipment, but you didn't have anybody who could get on the equipment, that's the challenge.
Well, some of the equipment, you can't get it right away from 1 year to 2 years, you know.
True,
So
true. But
you're
again, we're not-
projecting that out.
We're trying to be
It
very
needs-
careful that we don't spend money that creates a future staffing or obligation that we don't already have planned. But we can keep looking.
And Councilmember Freeman, just to remind you, we're also, this money is really to respond to the pandemic. And the way the ambulances qualified was because, as you may recall, we needed more time to wash those down and to clean those out and decon those ambulances because of the pandemic, and that's how they qualified. So we have to continue to make that tie to the pandemic.
We are hoping that maybe the Solari contract, as they look at what they've proposed is that we can grow that over the next couple of years also, that behavioral health section, and that would be a big support to public safety also.
Well, I'd made a note here in my comments when I read this a couple days ago, but on the I'm going to change the wastewater. Can we use any of this money for the Central Mesa reuse program?
Yeah, we've looked at that.
You know,
Yeah,
for the CMAR
No, you're right.
or
We've looked
anything
at it.
like
Go
that?
ahead,
Yeah,
Mike.
one of the difficulties.
I'm sure you've dialed into that.
One of the difficulties in using these monies for construction or capital projects are you have to do it before the design starts, because I think it's state law that forces us to do, and Beth could probably talk to this better, but to do before the design so that you're not stuck into the low bid that you would be if you had you done it after it started design.
Well, and I'm also looking at reducing some cost on the bonding side of it, if we have to bond the program, if we can reduce some of the costs. But if you're saying, okay.
We'd already started the process, so if we were just thinking about it and just considering it, we would find it, we
couldn't buy all the pipe all at once right now and just sit
No.
in Frank's yard.
Just say we need pipe. No.
Okay.
Those were.
I'm just throwing it out there. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Council. Any other questions on this topic? Okay, again, we'll look forward to an ongoing update on this. Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is item 2C. It's a presentation and to provide direction on SCADA and enterprise cybersecurity investments using American Rescue Plan Act funds.
Would you like a diet soda?
I would not know. I'm good, thank you. I'm off that. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor, Council. Give me 1 second here. Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity to talk about Mesa's Cybersecurity Resilience Program. Irma mentioned ARP funds, so we'll kind of talk about ARP funds, but really talk about the value of cybersecurity and the commitment that. Oh, sorry. My name is Ty Howard. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer.
Sorry, good morning. I'm Joe Sugihara, Assistant Chief Information Officer.
Sorry about that. So again, from a cybersecurity program, you know, as Mesa starts to expand, we hear about a lot of different projects, becoming a smart city. It's important that we start focusing more on smart cybersecurity. So a lot of the ARP efforts have been a huge plus for the cybersecurity program to strengthen Mesa as we continue to grow. With Meta, with Apple, with Google, with all these organizations coming in ASU, there's a need for local government to start scaling its efforts to respond. Now, typically, we think of hackers, we think of them as in Hollywood with the hood on in the basement, and they're geniuses and they're just hacking. Truth of the matter is, there's many different faces to hackers. There's black hat, people that have a bone to pick, so to speak. There's white hat, there's people that hack to figure out how to protect and strengthen your organization, right? And then there's script kiddies, often young folks that get a hold of tools and then they decide they want to, just for the challenge, want to hack. So I want to open up with this next slide, and it's really going to give you the context of the different faces of cybersecurity. So as you can see here, there's many faces for real hackers, genders, ethnicities, different groups throughout the country. So there's a lot of challenges, right? So typically, as we start growing, you start seeing that a lot of these people are very familiar faces, right? So there's no one stereotype of the type of hacker that's out there. So again, just looking at this, you can even see people that are in school, right? People that are in school learning to hack. And so this is good and bad. It's good in that people are learning more about cybersecurity. It's bad in that we need to make sure as governments that we start protecting our critical assets. So here's a quick slide to provide the context, and you can just see the diversity with cybersecurity, even nation state actors. So, and right here, what you see is a group of white hat hackers that were learning to hack, maybe at the university and so forth. So again, there's many different phases to hacking. And so what does that mean to Mesa? Well, Mesa, we do have PII, personally identifiable information, excuse me. We do have HIPAA type information. When our first responders and PD, when they're interacting with people, they do handle HIPAA data. So it's important that we have the controls in place to be able to respond. Even our critical assets, such as water and utilities, we need to make sure that we protect. And so the ARPA funds have been huge, close to 3.9 million in ARPA funds protecting SCADA, which previously was seen as didn't need protection, as well as Mesa Enterprise, to make sure, again, that we start to scale, right, as we start to grow and we start to become more secure. So as far as HIPAA violations, medical records are big money. When we see the internet, we see 2%. When we search Google, we see 2% of the entire internet. Truth be told, there's a dark web and there's a lot of criminal activity. So it's important that Mesa is being proactive and stays proactive. And when handling records for HIPAA, because of insurance fraud, it's a huge plus, a lot of money for bad actors. So this next slide is just going to show you some quick images of things that are going on out in the quote-unquote real world. A cyber attack of devastating proportions is not a matter of if, but when. So it's important, and it remains important, that the city continues to grow and scale. You see North Carolina, they had a water utility compromised, hacked, really advanced ransomware. You see the city of Atlanta, they suffered a $17 million breach as a result of ransomware attack. And often folks figure out that if we do recover or pay the ransom, there's a risk of being attacked again. So there's a lot of information regarding cities and attacks. Now, specifically to Mesa, approximately 16% of Mesa's population is age 65 or over compared to the others. And many times these more senior citizens are often attacked more, although there's some savvy senior citizens, but it's important that we are preemptive as far as protecting their assets with the city. And these ARP funds will do that. So I agreed to John and Chris, I wouldn't go into too much technical detail, but I want to quickly share just some cyber attacks. Malware, as we know, there's viruses that spread. There's Trojans, right, that kind of they're hidden. There's hidden viruses. And then there's ransomware attacks, which is the dreaded ransomware attacks that many times causes millions and millions of dollars for organizations to recover from. Often, this is the result of phishing, right, and spear phishing, where bad actors target the mayor, the city manager, the vice mayor, and they'll target and try to sometimes spoof and act like they're that person to trick someone to click on a link. There's also the dreaded 0 day. We assume at first glance that the software that we buy and that we own is secure. But truth of the matter is, it's a changing landscape where IT has to constantly patch, update, strengthen, and find those vulnerabilities before the bad actor finds those vulnerabilities. So it's always getting in shape, always getting ready. Then there's availability attacks. And I know we have some business owners on the council. It's really as if you have a storefront and you have hundreds of people coming into your store, but they're not buying. So the people that are buying can't come into your store. Or a telephone call. where you're waiting for your customers to come in, but somebody keeps calling and they can't get in. And so that's a denial of service attack. And then there's the brute force attack. The brute force attack really is really stating this, it's asserting this, that any system can be hacked given time and effort. Time and effort, it can be hacked. However, for us, right, it's a matter of defense in depth where we have enough controls and measures and tools. That means technical tools that can identify threats, that can protect against threats, that can respond against threats, and ultimately recover from threats. So the brute force attack is why we have the systems in place and defense in depth. So what's Mesa doing? As I mentioned earlier, with the $3.9 million in ARP funds, we work closely, and we continue to work closely with the SCADA team. We work with PD. We work with transportation and library to make sure that our strategic focus is in sync with the city's strategic focus. So we have several programs. We have disaster recovery. And I know Chris mentioned earlier, how do we respond from that in a meeting? Do we test our backups? So that's a huge effort where we have a person and a team responsible for testing. And the reason why we test is most ransomware attacks, when you're at the table negotiating with them, it's a matter of you don't have your backups and they have your data. However, if you have your backups and they have your data, they can keep that data because you have your backups. And so one of the major projects that came out of this ARPA effort is Immutable Backups. And what that means is these are backups that cannot be changed, not even by insider threat. So if someone was paid millions of dollars to destroy our backups as a consultant, as a contractor, they couldn't do it because it's like history. So that is significant, and thank you for that backup. Another project is DLP, data loss prevention, where as we have valuable assets within the city, PII we mentioned, personally identifiable information, confidential information, sensitive information, making sure that we have the control in place that that information does not leave the city. And so we're moving aggressively on that. We have a total of 21 ARP projects, and that's a combination of both SCADA and what we call Mesa Enterprise. And as far as, I think it was Councilman Freeman mentioned the PD. The PD is part of that, where we're making sure that they're included in this backup effort too, right? So first responders, so this covers everyone. We also have SOAR, and I won't go down a rabbit hole of all the detail, and if you would like to see what we have, we can dig deeper. But probably the big plus that came out of this was the SCADA side, which is utilities. So working with them, it's interesting because as I mentioned in the past, they were protected by virtue of the nature of what they did. However, we found that the Achilles heel for SCADA wasn't necessarily technical for the utilities folks. It was administrative. So we've worked closely with Carlos Arif and team to identify projects, and one is an administration project to focus on documenting process, training, how we do our contracts with our vendors, because vendors for SCADA is kind of the Achilles heel where in the past we assumed that this vendor who came in could be trusted. And we're also having tools to be able to record what vendors are doing when they're working in our SCADA environment remote. So there's a huge movement towards that. And again, operations and training. And I do want to thank the city leadership here for their commitment to cybersecurity, as well as council and the mayor. Last year, and this is unheard of, 99% of the city of Mesa employees were trained with 1 hour of cybersecurity, and we're doing it again this year. We also fish, and I mentioned fishing earlier. We fish and we challenge our staff to know what to click on and what not to click on monthly. So that's been huge. That's been a big plus. So as far as funding, again, about 3.9, with a good portion of that going to the utility side of the house is one funding stream. UASI, we received some grant money in their PD and fire law enforcement, as well as the City of Mesa budget. Some of our partners, and I won't go down detail, but you can see there's federal agencies that we work with, as long as vendors and other agencies. So in kind of closing out, we want to make sure that Mesa's assets are protected physically with locks and doors. Technically, that we have the tools in place, the logical tools to identify for threats in our environment, to be able to respond to threats in our environment. And then administratively, making sure that we have the policy, process, procedures that protect us. And so we do pen testing. And what penetration testing is, we pay those white hat hackers that I mentioned earlier money to try to hack and get into our system, to challenge us, to make us better, to identify weaknesses and vulnerabilities. We do that annually. We do SCADA tabletops. What if then? Working with these folks, identifying opportunities for us to improve on the SCADA side of the house. We constantly scan. So we have tools scanning our environment, identifying threats and weaknesses, changes that need to be made. As I mentioned earlier, DR testing, disaster recovery. Again, bad actors that are persistent, they can impact an organization, but if you have proper DR, you can recover from that. And then annual training, which has been huge. And with that said, I'm done. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Luna.
Thank you, and thank you for keeping us safe. When there is a potential hacker and someone, I know there's different layers, can we identify them and can they get prosecuted?
You know, that's an interesting, across the industry. Yes, the answer is yes, they can be. The challenge is the cost and effort, and sometimes these perpetrators are not in our country, and there's different laws and legal, so it really is a matter of due diligence and protecting home base, but it's really difficult to prosecute, and it's really not as cost effective. It's more cost effective to invest in the controls that we've done and continue to do.
And has there been an uptick in potential hacking from foreign governments, you know, because of Ukraine and Russia? I know that the president asked that we all harden our systems. Have we done that, and have we had potential hacking from foreign governments?
Surprisingly, it's steady, but as the city leadership knows that we're hacked, there's attempts on us, there's millions of attempts a year. Yeah. You know, and some of them are low-level attempts, so it's like it's raining, so that always happens. So there hasn't been a huge spike, given our tools that we have in place. But industry-wide, ransomware attacks have increased 300% from last year. So that in itself speaks to the growth of the attack and it not slowing down, right? And another interesting stat was that 80% of cities believe and are worried about ransomware attacks, but only 47% have taken measures to address. So fortunately, Mesa is taking measures to address. But to your point, Councilman Luna, it's just consistent. Mm-hmm. And that's where our defense in depth and our training kicks in.
Mm-hmm. And let's hope that we never are subject to ransomware. Is there, do we have insurance to protect us from that? Should that ever happen? And I know that you've got a system in place and hopefully it'll never happen, but do we have insurance?
Mm-hmm. Mayor and Council, we do have cyber insurance, and we actually work with the team on cyber insurance, but I don't want to say whether a particular claim would be paid through insurance, but we do get cyber insurance every year.
Yeah, we don't need to, and talk about that. But.
Again, the best insurance we have, Ty, you talked about it, is that the way we back up our system and our data, so that if they claim they have holding it hostage, right, we may say, well, you only have we have the data that's 24 hours before that. Right. So we could say, keep it. Right. We're good. We'll take what we already have. And that's the point of doing these backups and these immutable. You can't change it. Nobody can change it. So we're trying to come up with these systems that, while they may take control of our system, we have backed up frequently enough and comprehensively enough that we can, it doesn't have as much value as holding the entire system hostage that we can't do anything going forward.
And because that's really common across the nation.
Yes, it is.
I heard here through the information technology community that I'm on through National League of Cities, and it's hard, especially if you're a small community and just don't have the capability fortunately, we have a system in place that is hardened and protects our.
But it's expensive. These systems are not cheap,
Right.
right? I mean, but that's why the ARPA funds were actually very specific about making, I mean, there's a whole there's a section that talks about cybersecurity. So we thought this was an opportunity to do things that would be very difficult to do just from the general fund support. So this is going to put us in a stronger position.
Right. And I appreciate that you're monitoring vendors coming in and working on our system to make sure that they're good actors and not bad actors. So, and then what in the end, you mentioned something that was interesting to me is internal hacking from somebody, an employee doing that. And is that easy to identify once, hopefully that doesn't happen, but it could happen.
Well, and you bring up a good point, Councilman Luna. Truth of the matter is most breaches and incidents occur internal, and that may be the vendor. Right. So there's a degree of trust because you're a vendor, you have a company and an LLC or your insurance that everybody that works for you is good. Right. One of the investments was DLP that does have insider threat. Mm-hmm. That again, we're going to roll these out over time, over the next 3 to 4 years, and that's one of the efforts that we're going that will let us know, allow us to watch activity, as well as there's a product called Secure Link, without going into too much detail, that can monitor and record vendors. Mm-hmm. So really putting those controls, because insider threats is probably the truest threat, not really the person in the hood that's overseas, mm-hmm. or sometimes it's an employee that has somewhat of a beef or upset, disgruntled. That's even a better word, or a mistake, mm-hmm. Or they accidentally deleted something and they had too much access.
Mm-hmm. So. Okay. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Mr. Reddy.
I think my question were vendors, but particularly folks that we contract out, maybe groups. Is there like a separation as far as contracts that you separate? Say if they get hacked in their organization, is there vulnerability to us if they're working on a contract base through the city? That's my first question. And then I think on the community-wide, I've known a lot of organizations and some businesses that are just helpless when they get attacked. And is there any ongoing lessons learned and things that we are doing that we can share with the community at large here in Mesa to help? Because once they get attacked, people lost millions of dollars of revenue, and there's nothing that they really can do other than pay these ransom folks. It's just horror stories of, they included Secret Service, FBI, and others. And it's right now the industry is just like they just go through and you have to pay and that's it. And then hopefully you don't get attacked again. And so there's very little recourse. So what are we doing as a government? I agree, taking the proper precautions and shoring up our system, but is there things that we could work on for the community to be more active? At your stats that you said, 46% that are taking measures to protect themselves. I think we got to figure out a way how we increase and folks realize how beneficial this is as a preventative aspect for them to look to their future to invest in. I think because it's just horror stories that you're helpless. Like if you get attacked, you're pretty much helpless because you can't find the individuals that are doing this, and it's just a system that has been created now that you just have to do whatever they say because you're gonna lose your data, you're gonna lose your ability to work. So it's just that frustration that I've heard from folks from the nonprofit community, small businesses, large businesses that have lost millions and millions of dollars of just these ransomware attacks. And so I guess those are my two questions there.
Okay, and both great points, Councilman. The first part of that, as far as agreements, We do work with the procurement folks regarding business associate agreements when we're starting to work with vendors. So that's become a more common and important thing. And also making sure they have the proper certifications as far as when we're dealing with them. Like, do they have, cloud-based certs that make them safe? So that's the one. In regards to your point made, point taken regarding a lot of the smaller agencies that are struggling, that's a real thing. And fortunately, you see on this list here, there's a lot of organizations out there that are set up now federally to support small organizations. So just like hacking is a team sport by nation states, they work together collectively. Preventing hacking is a team sport. And so we work with other agencies. Homeland Security, they're huge. CISA. So there are agencies that are set up to help the smaller governments. As far as what we're doing, as far as business-wise, working with Travis Cutright, we've been presenting to different groups like the Chamber of Commerce, Economic Development, and really socializing cybersecurity, making that part of Mesa's DNA, right? Where that's what we do. We grow, but we also protect while we grow. So.
Thank you very much. Ms. Duff.
I have a quick question. Do we offer cyber security reviews in our small business technical assistance program? Do we offer that for review?
I was, as councilors are asking those questions, I was thinking that would be an opportunity for us. I need to talk to Economic Development Jay and those folks and see if that's in that curriculum of the hub that we provide, but if it's not, it probably would be something get a lot of interest. So I can follow up and see where we are with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for this gentleman? All right, thank you very much for keeping us safe. Appreciate it. Next item on our agenda, item 2D, and I know we're more than an hour through this meeting, but I think we've just got a couple of agenda items left, so let's just power through it. That's not a great introduction for you guys, I'm sorry. Jeff, we've been anxious. We saved the best for last. So item 2D is a presentation and to provide direction on the proposed downtown district revitalization project using American Rescue Plan Act funds. Gentlemen, thank you for being here.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. And Mayor, thank you for the welcome.
You bet.
We look forward to presenting a proposal for downtown district revitalization using ARPA funding to set the stage. District revitalization and facade improvement are specifically listed in the ARPA guidance as eligible activities. But much of what we're going to propose is truly about facade improvement. So I thought we would start by giving an overview summary of the successful facade improvement program that we had a couple of years ago.
So it does feel like a while since we've talked about the original facade program, so we'll refresh our collective memories. This program was constructed from 2018 to 2019. It was funded to the tune of about $1.2 million, which was primarily from CDBG funding and generous grants from our partners at the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian Community. And we were able to complete 8 properties during that time, 5 of which were colonnade properties, which we'll talk about more in the presentation. Going back to the goals of this program, they're very similar to goals across the nation, which is to increase or to create jobs, to create economic vitality in our small businesses, and to reduce the commercial vacancy rate. We also had an additional goal that's very unique to the city of Mesa, which was to remove and to replace the city-owned and city-maintained colonnades that front many of the properties in the historic core. So we'll take you on a quick tour now of downtown. This is a section of buildings 125 to 129 West Main. The building on the left of your screen was primarily used for storage. It was no active use. There was a restaurant use in the middle, but it had very high turnover. It wasn't attracting enough foot traffic, and then a History by George. After the facade program, we were able to attract Tacos Chihuas, which, if you don't know Tacos Chihuas, you gotta go to Tacos Chihuas. It's great Mexican food. And Proof Bread there on the left filled that space that was previously being used only for storage, and of course, History by George. The next section, this is our LeBaron building. This is 210 to 214 West Main. Not the most attractive looking building. It had a lot of transient uses, eventually went vacant. And after facade, we were able to attract Gus's Chicken, the local neighborhood comedy theater, And then we were able to stabilize Oro Brewing, which is one of the first breweries in downtown Mesa. And then, of course, I think everybody knows the historic Nile. This is one of the oldest and most venerated buildings in downtown, constructed in 1924. It had a lovely pink stucco across the front of the building, which we were able to remove, and now it looks like this. One of the great secrets of downtown is that much of the original architecture still exists behind the stucco of our buildings, and it's just a matter of removing that stucco and removing the colonnade that's covering them up. It's my understanding that they are now trying to pursue national historic designation for this building, which we would love to see, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that we were able to get that colonnade out of the way. And then when we had, at the end of the program, we had some leftover funding. That funding was not enough to start a new project, so we were able to catalyze a project that was already underway. The owner of 12 West Brewing was hoping to convert that from a wedding venue that wasn't used very often to what it is now, and we were able to take the remaining funding and catalyze that into what I personally believe is one of the most iconic restaurant frontages in the city at 12 West Brewing. So going around the horn, coming back to where we started, what was the goals of the project? It was to, again, it was the colonnades, it was jobs, it was the commercial vacancy rate, and to increase economic well-being. And as you can see from this short sample, that we believe that the council can be satisfied that this project accomplished those goals and even a bit more than even we had hoped, and it's bringing wonderful jobs and businesses to downtown.
So moving forward with our proposal for use of ARPA funds, we are continuing to want to focus on a very local issue as it relates to our downtown district and the vitality of our downtown district, and it is the colonnades. The colonnades historically have provided a great benefit to downtown in that we have shaded pedestrian ways. However, they have deterred from significant retail activities because they are heavy, not architecturally integrated, and they do not create great retail frontages. You can't see into stores and see the activity. You can't see into the restaurants and see that there are people there. So the removal of the colonnades, not only will it help with the vitality of our downtown, it will also help the city in its long-term maintenance obligations for this asset, as it is a city asset, and we do have to maintain it, and it is coming near its end of its useful life. We have taken care of 5 colonnade properties. There are still 51 properties along Main Street and along McDonald and Robeson that have colonnades. To that end, we conducted a survey in May to see what kind of level of interest there are amongst our downtown businesses and property owners to participate in a facade improvement program. We had 33 property owners respond to us, which represents 23 colonnade properties and 10 properties without colonnades. If we were to move forward with a new facade improvement program, it would be modeled largely on the facade improvement program from 2018-2019. Some minor changes that we would include in this is the inclusion of the ability to work on the ground plane in front of businesses. So essentially, one of our responses towards the impacts of COVID has been outdoor seating and outdoor patio space and the ability to expand outdoor seating. To be able to incorporate the design of an outdoor seating area as part of the facade improvement is a benefit not only to the vitality of the downtown, but to the businesses' responses to COVID. Things that will never be eligible, carrying over from our previous program, is things like interior remodeling, your property acquisition, capital just for operations. For this program, our preference, we would focus our area of attention on the Country Club to Center, 1st Street to 1st Avenue. We would have preferences towards properties with colonnades. Unlike the last program in which we did a low bid construction method, which caused some challenges through the construction activities, we intend to use a design build construction method for this project. And we will ask that all of our participants will contribute at least 5% towards the direct construction costs. In addition to facade improvement, some additional district revitalization efforts that we are going to look to do with leveraging some other funding as well is things like working with our property owners on their patios. There are some still existing patios that are challenging that we do want to improve. Wayfinding and signage downtown. We have several of those static kiosks that are in very poor shape that need to be refurbished. In addition to just wayfinding to our parking, we have had a lot of discussions recently about downtown parking, and one of the challenges is that we don't advertise very well just how much parking is available and helping direct our visitors, our customers to those parking areas. We'll also look for opportunities to fund some properties with facade improvement that do not have colonnades as well. To get things kicked off, recently the city was awarded a $300,000 congressionally directed spending award from the recently adopted federal budget. The city is providing an additional $300,000 in match, and that would provide the first tranche of our facade improvement money. So in total, with the $600,000 that comes from the federal budget grant, a $4.4 million request for Arpa funding, we would look for a total of $5 million in downtown district revitalization budget. If given the approval by council, we would be ready to move forward and finalize the program development, select all of our participants by the end of this year, start working with selecting a design build contractor, completing design and permitting in the following year, with construction commencing in 2024. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Jeff and Jeff. Questions, council?
Of course, I'm going
Vice
to have some
Mayor?
questions, yeah. So I'm very excited to have these federal funds and that we're matching them, 600,000. Do you have an idea how far that can go? I think we learned from our previous round that this endeavor is more expensive and complicated than we anticipated, and even now, more so with construction costs and inflation. How robust do you think we can make this stretch?
Mayor and Vice Mayor, we have using our past experience and being conservative in applying escalation costs, knowing where we are with current construction markets, and hoping to be able to provide facade improvements of the level of quality and impact as the previous program. We think that we can fund somewhere between 15 to 20 facade improvements with $5 million.
That's good, and we had, what, 23? I have to go back on the slide, something like 23 interested participants.
23 participants with colonnades, 10 without colonnades. So the demand far exceeds the requested amount at this point.
I love this program. We have a beautiful historic downtown, but behind the colonnades, you'd never know it. We have the largest historic stretch of buildings than any downtown, and we certainly should showcase that, and it adds to our economic development, and I'm very proud of the downtown that we have and the one that we're doing. So removal of the colonnades, what I've loved about being able to do it, of course, showcasing the front of the building, but it has also allowed those businesses to do great patios, whereas before that was interrupted and not allowed. And I think we're establishing a great patio life in downtown, so it's a place to hang out and see others. So I'm glad to see that we're also expanding on the patios. And I'll put in a shout out for being able to do some streetscaping along this. I know this is not part of this plan, but with removing the colonnades and doing our patios, that we can have some tree, some shade, some marking downtown and providing that level of comfort and coolness and greenery that a downtown should have. Thank you.
Ms. Pillsbury.
I was also going to just mention that, thank you, this is exciting. On slide 17, where's that picture from?
Unfortunately, I believe that's San Francisco.
Yeah, so I just got excited that you thought Mesa could look like that. So I would also say, let's add more trees. Because who doesn't want to sit right there and eat, right? That's beautiful.
Councilmember Spilsbury, I truly believe downtown Mesa can look like that.
Okay, and I'm not saying that just because my husband's an arborist, but we like trees. On slide 14, that parking garage is from Gilbert, correct, right?
Yes.
So are we looking at a parking garage that could look like that? Or are we just talking about different lots we have, different places? Or what are our parking solutions?
So this funding is not intended to increase our parking supply. It is to help market and identify to our customers the supply that is existing. One of the biggest challenges is we have 10,000 public parking spaces in downtown, 5,000 of which I think are in structured parking. Almost all of our downtown parking is available free of charge after 5 p.m. Monday through Friday and all weekend long. But yet you go into those parking garages and nobody uses them. And we believe that one of the reasons is nobody knows that they're there. And so whether we would use a nice large neon sign like this as a way to identify it, I don't know. But it would be something along that line to make it very clear that this parking is available to you. And also working with other, with IT and smart solutions too, to see whether or not there's a way to maybe make it more digital, make it obvious to people. You go to some garages, it tells you how many parking spaces are available at any given time. So it's along that line.
So maybe even signage on Main Street that has arrows or signs to say public parking down that way or whatever. Because I agree,
sure.
I think it's hard to find where to park in downtown, so.
Yeah.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Freeman and Mr. Luna.
Thank you, Jeff and Jeff. Gosh, J and J, like that. So the Colonnades, you say, front 51 properties in Mesa, and then the next one, 33 properties were interested with colonnade removal, I suppose, and then if they get the application to proceed, they have to contribute 5% monies towards the deconstruct of the colonnade in front of their businesses?
The Mayor, Councilmember Freeman, the contribution, the match from the program participants would be for direct construction cost of the facade improvement. Because the colonnade is a city asset, we're absorbing
we're removing that.
Yes.
Okay, at our cost.
Correct.
So if any other improvement.
Yeah.
So
Got
the
it.
idea is that the private portion of this, that's going to stick with the property is the facade. So that's where their participation comes in.
Did you, the other property owners that have colonnades, did they not want to participate? They like the colonnade? I mean, was there, the survey indicate that? I mean, I'm sure somebody would say, hey, I like the colonnade, it provides some shade, but is it aesthetically responsible, like you're saying, showing the business?
Sure. There are actually a few of our downtown properties where the colonnade, I don't know if it was at the time whether additional contributions were made, where the colonnade is actually architecturally integrated in the building and actually works well and wouldn't need to be necessarily removed. I don't know that the lack of overall interest from the other 20-ish colonnade properties is a function of their lack of interest, or whether it is a function of they're all small businesses and we go to them with a survey and say, here, please go online. And a lot of times that's just not at the top of their list. To be clear, this is just to help us gauge interest and help build a budget. We will be going out we'll be actively going out again to our downtown property owners and businesses to engage them and hopefully.
All of them, not
yes.
just the ones that.
Right, so we will be opening up a true application process, and I believe that some properties that aren't shown on this slide will come in and will have interest in.
Well, I'm sure some of the businesses lease their businesses from landlords, right? And so you're dealing with the landlord or the parcel owner versus the business owner. Well, I just know, I can say back in the old days when we grew up there that there were no colonnades and we enjoyed the open space. So I look forward to them being removed and opening up the cityscape. And if we can have more trees, I'm all in.
And to that point, we are working in parallel. There is still some additional funding, transportation funding for a downtown streetscape refresh. So we are currently actually having conversations right now about what would need to happen in order to be able to refill in some of those landscape islands that have long been vacant of any growth, and try and get some trees and shrubs, some plants color back into the street as well.
Well, I know there's discussion about the neon sign placement as well.
Yes.
And how many parcels does the city own downtown? Do you have that number?
Oh, parcels not.
Well, I mean, we're buying a restaurant hub.
Along Main
you know,
Street with
on
the
Main
colonnade
Street.
properties.
Mhm.
Should that sale go through, that would be the only one of a.
Well, we have the federal building as a side street on McDonald.
Well, and then we have museums and we have the city hall, so I guess we could, I don't know if we could add all that up, but.
Well, my question is do any of those qualify for any
Oh,
streetscapes? I mean, you talked about patios, you talked about shades, you talked about structures like that. So I'm just saying, are you looking at
Well-
city-owned properties?
Well,
as well as
certainly the post
business?
will get a
Post.
refresh
Okay, the
on
post.
landscaping.
And I do, the restaurant incubator, should we be able to purchase that building and move forward, that project would be able to fund
Yeah,
facade improvement, or we're intending to fund facade improvement that would be in line with this program as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Luna?
Thank you, Jeff and Jeff. How many years ago did we start with the CDBG funding? We were trying it, was piloting, is this gonna work? Is that like 5 years ago? Natalie, do you remember that? CDBG funding for removal of the colonnades, is that 4 years ago?
Yes.
Yeah, 4
Okay,
years ago.
Mayor, Councilmember Luna, we began that process back in 2015. The first thing we did was we came to council
Yeah.
with a policy that talked about removal of the colonnade. And then we piloted a $5,000
Yeah,
program,
yeah.
which wasn't ever going to do anything, but
Right.
we thought it might at the time.
Right.
And then we started after that, year after year, amassing the CDBG
Right.
funding enough that we could get to a critical mass where we could actually start constructing. And we were also applying for the SRPMIC grants over
Right.
that time.
So that was like 7 years ago when we had this discussion. We weren't sure if it was gonna work or not. We've discovered that it works, that, once you remove the colonnades, the building looks so much more attractive. So I'm gonna be supportive of this. I think it looks great. I don't like the colonnades, but I would support my colleagues if we can put some trees to make it, visually more interesting and attractive, to create some kind of natural shading, that would be ideal. But yeah, I think what you've done with that pilot, that experiment, if you will, was successful. So let's do the whole thing if we can. Thank you. And spend it as fast as you can, because we don't want Congress clawing back that money.
Mr. Reddy, did you have your finger up?
Yeah, I think just a question on the 5%. I'm assuming there's projects that are more extensive than others. How do you balance that cost so that we maximize the resources here to eliminate more of the colonnades, perhaps? But I don't know, the 5% is enough if a business owner wants to do something more expansive to their front. So 5% is I think maybe too small. But how do you balance that piece, right? Because that could end up costing the city a lot more funds if they're looking at the different items in front, and so, but you still have 20 other colonnades or potential folks that are still wanting at least the removal of that piece, right? So how do you work on that piece?
Mayor, Councilmember Heredia, it's a good question, and it's one that we struggle with, honestly, because we don't want to have a match that's so high, and honestly, it wouldn't be much higher than 5% before people would drop off, because the commitment on their part would be more than they can fund. We do still have plenty of small businesses down here that are making ends meet, but that don't have a ton of spare cash available. Our intent is to establish essentially a set grant amount by property, that will become their design and construction budget. Every property owner will have the opportunity, the right to design well beyond our budget, and we will encourage it. And we did have some of those instances in the first program where they designed beyond and had to contribute. So ours will contribute up to a certain amount. They would match up to that amount, and then if they want to build beyond that, they would have that opportunity as well.
Well, yeah, and I think we'll have the flexibility. I mean, I think we've always worried more on the bottom end, trying to make it affordable for some of the small businesses to participate. I think if we have someone who comes and wants to go really big, I think that's exciting for us anyway. So we'll, maybe we come back with an exception or something like that. But we would encourage them to go well beyond, the 5% is just a beginning point, really. So.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? Yes.
Sorry, I have a few more. So you mentioned 51 properties that we have Colonnades currently in front of 51 properties. So does that include the vacant properties? We do
Yes.
still have, so as far as participation, that does go into the equation of property owners that are not participating, possibly because they don't haven't identified a tenant. Okay, that makes. And then on the parking, I think a lot of wasted parking is, we have the permit parking for city vehicles during the week, and a lot of people don't realize that after 5 p.m. or weekends, those are available. So whatever signage we do, if we can somehow make that more evident in our signing, the permit parking is available evenings and weekends. And you had art installation. Do you have any idea what that looks like, or what? Do you have any ideas of what you're looking for?
We don't have specific ideas of what we're looking for. We want to be able to encourage the incorporation within facade improvement. So in some instances, that could be the incorporation of a mural on the side of a building or something that actually helps improve the activation of the building. Not necessarily looking at standalone art installations throughout downtown similar to the statue program. It's more how would art be incorporated into a facade improvement.
And at this time, we don't have a plan for any of the neon signs that we've collected from across the city. Is that correct?
We are working on something and hope to be able to come back to council following the break.
Individuals in the community who are
Yes.
working with us on some ideas about to incorporate the neon signs, some of which include incorporating as part of the post and what happens in that back area. And looking at are there any other locations where that could be used, or those signs could be used. So
Great.
we're having those discussions.
Thank you.
Thank you. I support this as well. I mean, it's, all you got to do is drive down Main Street and see where this has and hasn't occurred, and it's a night and day difference. We already are in the colonnade business, and I think we're trying to get out of the colonnade business. And so it's not, the question isn't, should we deal with the colonnades? We own them, they're our property, and we have to, their future is in our hands, so we can't just pretend it's not our responsibility to deal with the colonnades. So thank you. I appreciate the effort that's gone into this to find ways to continue to make those beautiful buildings more apparent and easier to appreciate. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Moving on, council, the next item on our agenda is Item 3, to acknowledge receipt of various minutes. Is there a motion to that effect? Thank you, Ms. Spilsbury and Mr. Freeman. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. That passes unanimously. Next is current events and conferences attended. Council members, you have anything you'd like to share with us? Mr. Luna?
Just really quick, I attended the HELO trip, National League of Cities, Hispanic elected local officials in Puerto Rico. We had a great leadership meeting and got to meet a lot of mayors from Puerto Rico and talked about some commonalities and how we can work together. And it was a great meeting. It was a great opportunity to meet a lot of mayors from Puerto Rico and get them involved in the Hispanic elected local officials organizations. And my colleague here and I spoke at Rotary, and we had a great conversation. And last night we had a check-in meeting at Falcon Field Airport. That's it, Mayor.
Great, thank you. Who else would like to share what they've been up to? Vice Mayor.
First of all, on my list is I would like to share that there's a community engagement class that Neighborhood Services is doing a residence guide to community and civic engagement. And you can register on the City of Mesa website. It's Tuesday, June 21st from 6 to 7 p.m. And you can learn about the ins and outs of city government and how to become more involved in decision-making, leadership roles beyond your neighborhood and community, and the impact of serving on city advisory and nonprofit boards, and how to be appointed to those boards, and a tour of the council chambers and how to participate in public meetings. So I think it's a really great class, so I encourage it next Tuesday, the 21st, 6 to 7 p.m. to register for that. We've had quite a few things going on. I think, did you want to talk about the SRP? Okay, I'll let you do that because
Okay.
I also attended a downtown Mesa Merchant Town Hall at the police department, and we talked about a technical assistance program to the real-time crime center. I attended the West Mesa Business Alliance. I think maybe Councilmember Heredia can expand on that a little bit. And some of us attended, Councilmember Luna, Councilmember Thompson, the Mesa PD Promotions and Awards program at the training facility. And I listened in on the Stormwater Management Plan public workshop last night about storm drain systems for our rainwater. And, oh, one more thing going on in this week is tomorrow night is Zen Night's Juneteenth celebration in downtown Mesa from 6 to 10 p.m. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Who'd like to go next? Well, I will take the bait on talking about what happened yesterday with regard to SRP. The Vice Mayor and I went to our Greenfield Water Reclamation Plant yesterday and received a $300,000 check from Salt River Project. This was something that we earned. I think we're all very, very proud of our climate action plan, and we all recall that the way that that plan is being implemented is we're leaving it up to all of our city departments, to find ways that in their area of influence they can be more energy efficient, among other things. And Salt River Project actually rewards their customers for being energy efficient. And so there were in multiple areas, including at the wastewater treatment plant, but out at Falcon Field Airport and other city departments, we qualified, in different ways by finding ways to reduce our energy reliance. And the combined total of all of those awards was maxing out the program at $300,000. We're the first city to do that in Salt River Project's customer base. So I just want to express my appreciation, our appreciation to Mr. Brady and our staff for really embracing the climate action plan and finding ways to be innovative and to lower our carbon footprint by reducing our electrical use. So I was proud of the city for that. I'll also mention that thank you, I have been gone for a few meetings now. Last week I was at the Yale conference. Thought it was very productive. Met with a group of mayors there, including the mayor of Buffalo, talking about gun violence. Very poignant meeting and topic, obviously. But also had the opportunity to participate in a conversation with President Zelensky of Ukraine, talking about world issues and the economy, and hearing from some national and global leaders there on how that's impacting our everything on the planet, including Mesa, Arizona. So appreciate you excusing me last week when I attended that conference. Anyone else like to share anything? Ms. Pillsbury.
I was waiting for Frankie to bring it up, but you want to do?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Yesterday, the Maricopa County relocated their Human Services Department center that works on Head Start programming, workforce development, and other strategies around workforce at Southern and Westwood, close to Southern and Alma School. It's a great center. I think hopefully we'll get a lot of people using that, and it fits really nicely to our workforce development strategies that we're working on with the roundtable and other avenues with our nonprofit community. Things like the New Leaf Center at Broadway and Mesa Drive. So hopefully it will catapult us moving forward on education and workforce needs for the city of Mesa. So thank you for the reminder.
I just loved seeing the collaboration that can happen between the county and the state and the city, multiple cities, to bring these services to a really needed area, and to just see how lives could be affected by that collaboration. So you did a great job speaking as well. It's great.
I spoke with Supervisor Galvin yesterday, and he was very enthusiastic about it. I wish I could have been there, but I was at picking up that check I just described. So that is great. We need to just underline the partnership between the county and the city on human services, and I appreciate them having that facility in our community. Council, anything else you'd like to highlight? If not, we do have an additional item on our agenda. Item 6A is to convene an executive session on the pending patent litigation. Is there a motion to go into executive session on this matter? Thank you, Mr. Luna, seconded by Mr. Thompson. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Thank you. We will now go into executive session.